Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, issue number one. I was actually pleasantly surprised with how good this was, especially considering the fact that I know nobody in this book. And I'm not talking about the characters, I'm talking about the people who made the book. Speaking of which, let's talk about that. So the writer is Mary, I'm going to butcher these names in advance, just cut me some slack, all right? So we got Marianke Nijkamp, Dutch writer who's done, I think, three novels before, young adult. I don't know. Remember, anyway, like at least three novels before. Penciler Enid Ballum, inker Oren Jr., and color artist Brittany Peer. The main cover is by Janoy Lindsay. And honestly, I'm just like, thank God for VC's Joe Caramagna, the letterer, who's the only person who did this book who I know. I don't think I've ever heard of any of these people before. Oren Jr., maybe. But my God. That being said, pretty good job. You know what I'm saying? Pretty good job. Let's break it down. I really like the art in here. The three artists, Enid, Oren, and Brittany, I think they did a fantastic job. They worked with each other. Excellent. I don't know if they know each other or whatever, but they were able to collaborate or feed off of each other's work really well, with Enid taking the lead, obviously. But man, I really enjoyed the art. You could every single thing that happened in the book, you could see it. Everything that was mentioned, it was shown, right? When you want to talk about good art in a comic book, you know what I'm saying? And I've mentioned this so many times before. Writing a comic book is not the same as writing anything else. The absolute best you could even compare it to is writing like a safety manual or something like that, which I just found myself talking about recently. If you're writing, one of those safety manuals where they actually have the pictures there to show you these things, it's almost like that's the closest you get to it. But even then, it's still not the same, because you would write down, don't, you know, put bleach in your eyes, and they show somebody putting bleach in their eye, or they, carefully put it in the right place. Make sure you put the, things away. Your mother doesn't work here, so, clean up after yourself, and you show someone cleaning up, right? It's like even that just doesn't work, because with a comic book, you really just don't want redundancy. If anything is going to kill a 22-page comic book, it's going to be redundancy, even the slightest. So if somebody writes, Kate Bishop was walking down the street, you better show me a picture of Mars or something, maybe not, something related, but just don't show me Kate Bishop walking down the goddamn street, because for the love of God, I don't need to see it after I just read it. And if you're going to show, which you should show, don't tell, then don't you dare tell me, right? Don't you dare. And I do not recall a single instance in this comic book where that happened. So absolute kudos to all of the art team in this. And some of it has to go to Marieke. Anyway, can I say Mary? I'm going to say Mary for now. So good job to Mary. I think I'll butcher the name a little bit less. For the collaboration, because she didn't write and then ask for it to be shown, or get it shown, whatever. Anyway, as far as the writing in and of itself is concerned, there's some things here that are a little weird. All right, I'm gonna point out the bad things. I'm usually heavier on the writing, because although I've arted before, I've done art, and I still once in a while get the urge to draw something. But mostly writing and editing is my forte, right? So I'm usually going to focus on that heaviest, and that is the guiding principle to a comic book. So I don't think I'm too far off the mark by commenting mostly on that. When Kate Bishop, first off, kudos on calling it Hawkeye Kate Bishop, because I'm not a fan of calling Kate Bishop Hawkeye. Call her like the Bishop as opposed to Bishop the X-Men, right? Like, call her something. I hate the whole using somebody else's legacy name. I abhor that with a vengeance, right? Like, it's just so stupid. Find a different name. It's really not that hard. If you can't find a different name, don't make the character. I don't know what to tell you. Just don't make it confusing for people. But at least calling this title Kate Bishop, and she calls herself Kate Bishop, and she clearly has an open identity. What's the big deal? Why does she have to be called Hawkeye also? Anyway, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, she sounds weird. I just said call her Hawkeye again, right? It's confusing. Kate is trying to spy on this area or guard this area because the next door neighbor is her friend and somebody they made threats to destroy this business. So it's like a rival business thing. It's not the best thing in the world, but it definitely sets the mood. She's not taking on these huge cases, right? She's a PI. She's a private investigator. She's not trying to save the freaking world. She's trying to save, like, the small business next door. Perfect. Perfect. You could not ask for a better setup. Because one of the biggest questions in a world as crazy as Marvel, like DC, even their street level characters like Batman can still take on freaking Darkseid. You know what I'm saying? Tell me I'm wrong with Batman and Robin being the two characters who have dodged the Omega beams from freaking Darkseid. Somebody's gonna say, "Well, for Batman, it was the Omega effect." How about effectively kiss my butt? All right, you know what I'm saying. With Marvel, though, there is the question of what level are these people on, right? Because Hawkeye, either of them, are not on the same level as Thor. And neither of them are on the same level as Captain America. Neither of them are on the same level as Iron Man, right? They're all of different power levels, And that's important to remember. So if there's ever like one of the best mixed teams in the world is clearly Avengers, right? Because you have high power level, low power level. So a threat is usually not just one isolated threat. There's a bunch of different things happening. Captain America is usually not going to go for the main bad guy. He's going to go for some of the rabble on the side or think of the tactic to do so, right? And and Hulk are going to go head in, right? So everybody's going to do different things. You know what I'm saying? Cap isn't going to be, or Iron Man isn't going to be taking care of ground level people when there's a flight threat up ahead, right? You just send him or Captain Marvel up to take care of that, right? So you're going to, yeah. If there's a bullseye that needs to be hit and Hawkeye's on the team, we'd be a little pissed and scratching our heads at the very least if freaking Thor was the one to handle the thing where it's just a small little opening that, the Hawkeye'd be the one to be like, let me shave off the end of the shaft really quick. Done, or make him sweat a little to do it. But we obviously know right away what Kate Bishop's power level is. She's just trying to handle the business next door. And a couple of thugs come in and she's got to put boots to asses, right? Or arrows to asses. Or arrows to hands and knees and a shoulder at one point. Here's where I run into a little bit of a problem. And this was literally the thing that bothered me the most about it. When you have a character who is clearly head and shoulders above the rest. Here's just regular thugs that are masked, right? And she's just awesome and she's just, flip, 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 knocking people out. She safely handles some of them, but others not so much. Like she uses a bolo on one of them, a net for one guy's hand, and the other arm like a web or a sticky, glue thing, like the Trapster, Paste Pot Pete. Remember him? There's a bunch of different ways that she has to safely eliminate or remove targets from the battlefield, right? But then another guy, she shoots him in the shoulder. It's like, I don't know that that's necessarily necessary, right? Hold with me for a moment. Another guy, she shoots him in the hand. And I mean, that's one thing, because, like, these arrows, it's not like, the standard arrow. I don't know anybody who's ever used a bow and arrow before, but the standard arrows that you get for target practice, they're just a little, pin. I should actually go get my freaking archery set right now. Anyway, there's just like a little pin on the end, like a little nub that's a little sharp on the end. But when, high impact, it's going right through you. And you can put them into trees or chuck them into targets, whatever, whatever. That would have worked good, shooting them through the hand. but she's got those freaking Terminator arrowheads on the end that have 3 or 4 barbed, you know, flanges on the end. That when it's going through somebody's hand, I'm sorry, this is just something that I notice, I recognize right away. When it's going through somebody's hand, that's not just only piercing skin. She clearly severed at least 2 metacarpals in the back of the hand and probably tore up the freaking ligaments, which means that he's not going to be able to bend his fingers anymore. So that pretty much cuts out his archery, right? That's permanent damage. And the other arrow went into the same guy's kneecap. I mean, right through that's the patella, I think, right? Right through the kneecap. And a big barbed thing, like just a regular one would fracture the damn thing. This would have shattered and destroyed his freaking knee. And God forbid anything else it would have hit, ligaments, cartilage, you know what I'm saying? Bleed to death. Like that. These are big freaking arrowheads. Holy crap. Like these are take down and you ain't getting back up arrows. And she's using those people. Meanwhile, she's using non-lethal stuff for other people. If you would have shown that it was life or death, okay, fine. If they would have, but like the one guy got the drop on her and had a gun right to the back of her head, and she does 2 kicks and then, fires an arrow and puts it through the trigger assembly of the gun. So, the little pistol, so it's actually just, woo, 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 on the wall. And that's a guy who was right behind her with the gun to her head, and she did that. And then this other guy, she got doom, doom. That's a bit much. Let's take it a step further. She was also talking. She was talking shit during it. I may have been in a couple of fights in my life, right? Some of you guys may be a little bit observant. You might be wondering, what's all this stuff about? Well, maybe one of these days I'll tell you that story also. In the meantime, I have never talked shit in a fight before. I know this isn't the real world. It's it's a comic book. Yeah, but it still comes into the believability of this. If she's talking shit about, I've got to go over here with my friends and I don't really want to, and blah blah. Thanks for the conversation, guys. If everybody was taken out non-lethally or non-permanent injure like, that would have been perfect. But the one guy she shoots in the shoulder and the other guy she shoots through the hand and through the knee, clearly crippling this guy for life. You can't be talking shit in the middle of permanently injuring somebody because these are superhero comics. Why is Spider-Man the number 1 character and has usually been the number 1 character in Marvel for the entire run of Marvel ever since Amazing Fantasy issue number 15, right? Because here's a guy who just doesn't have anything lethal about him. In fact, at one point when somebody decided to, they had they made him mystical and had the spikes that would come out of his hands. You must evolve or you'll die. Fans shat on that hard. And for very obvious reasons. Peter Parker is a non-lethal kind of guy. I mean, he brings web shooters to a gunfight. Come on. You have to keep... So when you change Spider-Man, what happened? The fans took a huge gorilla dump down an elevator shaft on that. So they moved it over to Ben Reilly and gave it to him instead, right? Actually, was it Ben Reilly? Or was it the other... What the hell is the other guy? Anyway, he gave it to one of the multiple freaking clones of Peter Parker. I think it was Ben Reilly. Anyway, and so Peter didn't evolve. And he didn't die. So it says something, right? Fans don't want to see stuff like that. These are superhero comic books, right? This isn't the Punisher that we're reading. If you're going to turn Kate Bishop into a Punisher type character, you got to go full Punisher, right? There should be some consequences for this. If I see in part 2 or issue 3 or something like that she's being sued by these guys, right? And we actually see this play out, boom. Okay, makes sense. Especially if she eventually and fairly quickly realizes the moral conundrum that you are taking up the role of a vigilante. I mean, you have to bring the real world into this. The Kyle Rittenhouse stuff, right? The Ahmed Arbery stuff. 2 different situations, 2 different verdicts, right? 2 different ways of looking at it. Multiple different, I like to say multiple, realistically, 2 schools of thought on it. Either he should burn in hell or he deserves to be free, right? No matter how you look at this, you have to relate current events with comic books, because that's what comic books, ever since the Marvel Age, has always done. And when we talk about a Marvel comic, it makes more sense for you to relate that to the modern era. Vigilantism. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it stupid? Or is it actually heroic? If you want your heroes to be heroes, you goddamn well better understand what a hero is. Spider-Man is a hero. Punisher is not. At best, you could say he's an anti-hero. You might even argue he's an anti-villain in some cases. Same thing with Wolverine, right? There's a difference between Wolverine and Captain America. And some of the worst comics, when a certain somebody who will remain nameless, who was destroying Superman recently, and just put out Checkmate, issue number 6 this week. Anyway, it's Bendis. He, when he put Captain America and Wolverine on the same team, and actually Quesada had a lot to do with that also, that was just, it was the worst, to me, the worst idea for the Avengers, aside from having Carol Danvers raped by her son, which was the most ridiculous thing ever. And yes, Shooter needs to be held accountable for that. Yeah. This, there's just some parts in here that kind of broke my heart. Later on, we go to the standard soap opera wrestling angle type thing where, oh, it turns out that I've got a long-lost sister, but she knew about it, but she never mentioned it. Hey, Kate Bishop is a new enough character that you can do something like that with. It's just... it's going to seem really campy when you do something like that, right? It's going to seem a little daytime soap opera, Monday Night Raw style, I don't know, approach when you just have family members suddenly appear. All of it, for the most part, it was a little weird. It was whatever. Here, the texts. I had a little bit of a problem with the texts. I'm old. I hate texting. I'll text with my daughters just because, but they know that I hate it. and they try to be respectful and put everything into one long text as opposed to send, send, and I didn't even look at the first one yet. You know what I'm saying? Oh God, I hate that. I'm old. I'm 46 years old. I'm way past that nonsense, And everybody owes cell phones to me and the 2 teams that I've worked on. So remember that. But some of you guys don't know. I used to be an electrical engineer, and I was instrumental on miniaturizing GPS for cell phones and other products. And before that, I actually worked on wireless internet, which eventually became Wayland, which was the Australians, but they had less red tape than us. But we were still one of the teams that created wireless internet. So claim to fame. Anyway, the texts on here, the constant back and forth, it's one thing. It was good and it was bad. It was good because you get to see her relationship with a bunch of different characters. Oh, also huge shout to Mary here for actually putting on some of the West Coast Avengers in this, either through text or in person, the big hug scene towards the beginning. Fantastic. Because I loved Kelly Thompson's West Coast Avengers run. I thought it was good. It didn't turn to great, but we didn't have a chance for it to really turn to great. But it was really, really good. And I really do wish that it would have continued. We got Jeff the Land Shark out of it, for crying out loud, But it wasn't throw the baby out with the bathwater and let's just start this character all over again. It's great to see a little nod to, at the very least, the recent, last time that we've seen Kate Bishop in a series. So really good idea doing that and paying a little bit of homage, just a little bit of respect to what came before you. It's one of the things that's going to endear fans to you, right? Later on, when you wind up seeing she's doing the texts, and it lets you know her relationship with this one, with that one, with Hawkeye, with America, with all these different people and whatnot. There's parts where she just does the little initials. The one thing, JIS, I figured that was just in case. There was one right before which I didn't understand, and again, I'm not interested in trying to think about it or look these things up. I honestly have, if I had two shits to give, it wouldn't be for this. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I think it's all whatever. I also never learned the Starbucks language. So meanwhile, I'm the guy who eventually fully translated the Krakoan language. Right? Yeah, that was me. Go back and look at those videos. I'm the one who broke that cipher. And I literally don't care about lingo, goofy lingo like this, you know? To see, jeez. To see her talk like this to one person and then to some, or excuse me, it wasn't even her talking to these people. To see two different people talk to her in the same voice on the text messages, that caught my attention, right? Teaching English for a while, writing, editing. You want everybody to have different voices. And even in the slight, and being a novelist, she should know better. I think that Mary should know a whole lot better than this. When the texts all start to sound the same, when Hawkeye sounds the same as America, when they're both texting Kate Bishop, little things like that we'll notice. We will notice, right? I'm going to do the Black Panther review in a moment, and you'll see I really go into that a lot more also. But anyway, what else? Anyway, so most of this, it was a very slow pace. There was action, but it was a slow pace, and I dug it. It was very easy to follow. Where I run into an actual major problem with the comic book was the very end. Because she goes to a place where she's thinking that I might be kidnapped, you know, just in case this is a kidnapping or a setup. Something else happens instead, and it's cool, and we're learning some things. It's a little campy. Fantastic job again on to the art team and the writer, because they separated the past of the flashbacks and the modern day stuff. The flashbacks were just to keep what's happening now in context. Really great. Like, that's something that makes me think, like, did Mary do comic books before? Possibly, because it was really good. The whole transition between you there was never any question that this happening was a flashback, and it directly relates to what's happening now. So how Kate Bishop feels about the person who she's talking to. Trying not to spoil the comic book too much. There are plenty of other people who don't do reviews but call it reviews who will spoil comic books for you. I want you to go out and buy the comic book. Support the comic book industry. And this was a good comic book to get. But the ending I had problems with. It was rushed. It was almost like, okay, we did everything we wanted to do, but now there's just this one last thing we got to do, and oh crap, I've only got 3 pages left. That's when you go back and revise. And whenever I've tried to do my own comic books, that's the biggest problem that I've always come across also, right? And this is way back in the day. And they've never been published, so you're not going to find them anywhere. Good luck. I don't even have the leftovers of them anymore. But when everything just kind of, bow, happens, it's too much. It's too much, and it's like you've already set the pace. The narrative has already been set, but now you set the pace of the comic book also. And then the end, when you put everything on fast forward, suddenly it doesn't feel right. It feels completely out of place. I was confused reading the end, and I believe that most of us would be a little kerfluffed, to say the least. It wasn't good. It was not a good idea to rush it. Like, you're better off just finding a better way to do it, edit something, do whatever. Like, you've got a certain, and anybody who's written, I'm sure that Mary's done short stories before, right? And if you've done novels before, the bane of your existence is short stories, where you've got a smaller, much smaller word count, you know? Tell a story with only 500 words. Tell a story with only 1 paragraph. And I'm talking 4 to 5 sentences, and don't you dare run on, right? That's the bane of a novelist's existence. Too bad. You're writing comic books now. Figure it out. Real talk. That ending was way too rushed, It was hurried, and it was just raw. It was completely off, and it just took like a big stomp on the pace of the book. And it was honestly, it was the only thing about this comic book that I found to be terrible. The last thing that was said in here was, "Welcome to the circus, Kate Bishop." Now, I don't know how much into the history of Clint Barton Hawkeye, the like Hawkeye actual, that Mariecki has gone into, but I'll tell you this: anybody who's a Hawkeye fan knows that Clint Barton got his start in the circus. So if you mention the word circus with a Hawk character, damn well better do something with an actual circus. I know it's going to sound silly. I know it's going to sound silly to anybody who's not familiar with the Clint Barton character except from the MCU. But I'm telling you right now, if you mention circus, that had better be like Ruby Tuesday who was talking, right? Or somebody from the Psycho Circus, or so I better see a freaking Kiss appearance. You know what I'm saying? I better see Gene Simmons coming out. "You're in the show. You're in the Psycho Circus." And I say, "Welcome to the show." That's what I think it was Paul Stanley who sang that song. But it's not the point. All right? That's what I need to see. That's what I need. I need to see something with the circus at some point since the word was mentioned. This is why you got to know the characters you're writing about. Hello? This is a franchise. I say this all the time, and I'm saying it with meaning, and this one's for the people in the back. The only purpose to write a franchise is to make money, and the only way you're really going to make money off of it is to cater to the fans of the franchise. Not one single Star Trek fan wants to see a Star Trek series where there was no such thing as a Captain Kirk. That had better be a what if. That had goddamn well better be a what if. And it better be some strange universe that the actual crew, who do have some kind of descendancy through rank or squalor or whatever, with Captain Kirk, with Captain Picard, with Captain Janeway, right? With all of the great captains we know in the starships and everything. Like, if there was no Enterprise in your Star Trek world, it's not freaking Star Trek. I don't care if CBS or Paramount is running that show. You're all morons if you think anybody wants to see Star Trek where none of those things existed, because nobody wants to see that. Listen closely. Again, the people in the back. There is not one single person in the world who wants to see that. You will not find someone like that. So if you're going to be writing in a franchise, you damn well better respect the franchise. And that requires respecting the fans. It's really, I should reverse that. If you want to respect the fans, you have to respect the franchise. And I don't care what editors or bosses say. "No, don't worry. Continuity kills." No, lack of continuity kills a franchise. Sometimes sayings aren't sayings for good reasons. So keep that in mind. This is a franchise. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I got. For the most part, like I said, I really like this comic book. The pacing at the end and the just short of murdery stuff that she did at the end, like crippling people when you're having fun and, talking trash, and clearly able to, stop a couple other people very, very non-lethally, non-permanent injury, yeah. Didn't like that too much, and the rushed ending was just terrible. Aside from that, though, solid comic book. If this is Mary's first comic book and all these people's first comic book, minus Joe Caramagna, who's a freaking age-old pro, really fantastic job. A really good first issue, and I'm looking forward to the next issue, because I really hope that some of those things that I talked about are followed up on. Anyway, guys, I'm out. Like the video, watch an ad. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed. Hell, you guys are still here? Okay, let's make this into an after credits thing. Let's talk about the Hawkeye season 1, episode 1 and 2, which just dropped on Disney Plus. It was pretty good. I liked it a lot. It was really fun. My wife actually did, like my youngest son started wrestling with me at one point. You know, you got to bond with your kids. So we're wrestling. And at one point, actually at multiple points, she's like, you two need to stop and you need to shut up or you need to get out because I'm watching this. Like, I'm really into this. I'm like, holy crap, she really is. Wow. I don't think she got into freaking WandaVision, which was, especially the first two episodes, were definitely made for a female audience in mind. You know what I'm saying? Not that a guy couldn't like it, because I really liked it, but holy crap, you know? She actually seemed to be more into this than she was into Wanda, which is surprising to me, you know? Fantastic. And my oldest son, my 8-year-old, he was getting so much into this stuff. Like he was really paying attention to some of the things that happened, like some of the things that would happen, and they would of course reference back to something else at some point or another. At one point, almost unrelated, he says, oh yeah, he's actually out there. And the one girl who showed up at the end of Black Widow who said that Hawkeye killed Natasha. So when they mention Natasha, they're reminding you of that. I was like, my man's growing up. So now I was really impressed with these first two episodes, right? You didn't Hawkeye is still as tough as nails, and yet he's reserved, right? He's one of those guys, he almost feels like, you know, one of those ancient Shaolin monks that you see on freaking Black Belt Theater or Kung Fu Theater, you know, back on Sundays on USA back in the day. Excuse me. Freaking fantastic. You just see, like, he's calm, he's cool, he's reserved, he's laid back, he's like, oh no, it's cool, whatever. And all of a sudden, spring into action. And I'm like, whoa, nice, I'm digging it. If I had any complaints, it's the idea that one guy stole his suit and he's dealing with the freaking LARPers and whatnot. And it's funny, people have always made fun of LARPers. Any kind of form of media that you go to, even if it's about LARPers, you know, role players or whatever, everybody's always making fun of the LARPers. And this is one of those things where it's like, why would you even respect these people if they're acting like this, right? That being said, really weird way to go. So my wife actually said at one point, are you offended? I'm like, I'm not offended by this stuff. I probably just, like the guy and the girl, I'd probably just punch them both in the face and freaking go and get my suit. Like, that's my property. Like, you're not going to stop me. And I'm not as badass as Hawkeye, you know, a fake character. But I'm badass enough that I'm not going to let anybody freaking get in my way. It's like, dude, that's my property. I'm going to get my property. You're not allowed on here unless you do. Conversation's over, right? Now I can go get my stuff. You are not going to stop me from, go, call the police. Please call the police. So this person can be arrested for stealing my property and you aiding and abetting in the theft of the property. That was literally the only frustrating part that I had with the entire, you know, first two episodes was that scene where I'm like, this could have been done a different way. I love the idea that Hawkeye's just like, you know, boom, 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 boom. And he's like, you know, callously, like showing how incredibly skilled he is. I really like that. That was good. But the whole stuff before that, like, there was a better way to do that. And you didn't have to make fun of the LARPers to do that. You could have instead made it, instead, I know who you are, but you're still not getting past. Bitch, please. Right? Don't. I think they could have instead made it where it's like, oh my God, you're Hawkeye. Listen, please. You would turn this, like, you would make it so that we can make so much money and say, you know, you got to pay for this or that. We're definitely going to charge a credit card. Like when one group, he goes to and like, no, I'm going to give you this stuff for free. He's like, that's not necessary. It's like, no, it is necessary. You saved our city. And the next person saying, yeah, I recognize you also, but screw you. We're charging your credit card and you're not coming on here until you pay. I don't see it as look at the diaspora. No, it could have been something as simple as show a little bit of respect and say, listen, please, if we can get some pictures with you in here doing this stuff, do you realize what that would do for a business? Please, we're going to get you the suit. I'll go over there and I'll pull the suit off of him myself if he's going to resist, which he wouldn't have. He was a cool guy. But, like, I'm sorry, am I wrong? Wouldn't that have been a little bit better? Because when my wife said, are you offended? Her next thing, when I said, no, I'm not offended, it's just annoying, she's like, I'm a little bit offended. I'm like, why are you offended? She's like, because isn't LARPing just cosplaying? I'm like, well, I mean, I guess you can call them like bastard step siblings or maybe cousins thrice removed. So, but yes, essentially they're almost hand in hand. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's this and there's this and LARPers, cosplayers. You know, the LARPers cosplayers don't usually LARP, but they can. They can, yeah. So because I got her into doing cosplay. Now she's into it more than I am. Go figure. But yeah, anyway, too much on that. The introduction of Echo, Maya Lopez at the end, fantastic. Fantastic. And when I used to have the Comic Book University podcast, oh man, I talked it up big time. It's just like I'm really glad that they went out and they actually found good and solid representation for it. Because when you talk about cultural appropriation about all these things, if you don't handle an indigenous person properly, nobody is more invisible in the world than indigenous people. Everybody else is fully represented. The people who are always essentially invisible are the indigenous people, the natives, the original natives for the land, the people who were here before us, So no, I dug that. Also, being almost a quarter Cherokee myself, it says something, right? Maya's introduction, that song, I already downloaded it. If you guys are wondering, that's called Depeche Mode. The band is Depeche Mode. The song is Christmas Island. It's actually a pretty deep cut. So Depeche Mode, Christmas Island. Go look it up. Listen to it. You can listen to the full version. I think it's like 4.5 minutes, something like that. It's a great song. It's a really good song. And when that was going and the way that ended, it made me want it more. Look, I'm not a huge fan of industrial music, but one thing I will comment on is when you have industrial music or that industrial sound, the steel drums very specifically, there's never anything that's good. It's either great or it's blah, right? Either and that's what usually happens. They wind up just screwing it up and it's just a bunch of stupid noise and it's whatever. But sometimes you can have a bangarang, right? Sometimes you can have that electronic sound or that industrial sound. I know they're both different, but they have too many similarities to not acknowledge them. When you have that really good sound, go listen to Jane's Addiction, Jane Says, the live version of that with the steel drums. Amazing. And the first time I ever heard it was actually Led Zeppelin. Most of you guys were like, what? Yeah, I think it was 1983, the Coda album, which was posthumous to John Bonzo Bonham's death, the drummer. He was considered one of the best drummers ever. He wasn't really that great, but he did have a very unique sound because of how ridiculously strong he was. He had a giant lead foot that just he would break drums all the time. That's not necessarily a good thing, but when they didn't break it, it gave a sound that nobody else could replicate. And he had great sticks. Sometimes there were 4 sticks. Sometimes they were freaking tree trunks. The point is, and I'm not exaggerating when I say those things, you go listen to not Poor Tom, excuse me. That wasn't even off of Coda, was it? I think that was off of In and Through the Outdoor. Anyway, Bonzo's Montourage, and sometimes mixed up Moby Dick and Bonzo's Montourage combined. Also good. When he was playing the steel drums on there, that was the first time I'd ever heard them. And I was floored. And steel drums have always been just this thing where if I hear them, I'm very judgmental. Right? Very judgmental. It's never good. It's either great or it's And this was just fantastic. So I don't know who's been listening to Depeche Mode on here, but I mean, this is something that young and old can both get into and just listen. And of course, when she's too much about the thing, when she puts her hand on the woofers, right? Of the speakers, she just puts her hand there so she can actually feel the music. I turned to my wife and was like, "That's Echo, Maya Lopez," and she's like, "Oh yeah, she's deaf, right?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, I could tell. She doesn't know the character. She's never that's too deep of a cut for her. She's never heard of freaking Echo before. You know what I'm saying? Like that. She has no idea who the character is. So she was able to figure out right away. Boom, this character's deaf." Fantastic. They did so much here. There was a lot of nods to the past, right? Having Hawkeye have the hearing aid now, perfect. I always thought to myself, why doesn't he have the hearing aid, right? And then they gave a very quick, like a 2-second excuse why he has the hearing aid. Why do you have the hearing aid? Not sure which time. I'm not sure which. A lot of too many stories to sort through, right? Love it. Absolutely love it. It's fantastic, right? And it made the hero more relatable, more appreciable, right? And you could sympathize with this character. And some people could empathize with him. And I hope that it actually has something to do with each other, because since she's deaf and he's losing his hearing, hello? Like, I really hope that they do something with that. I have a feeling that he's going to die at the end of this, because you have to get rid of the character, and the all too human characters, when they die, it's moving. When Thor dies, it's something epic and heroic, and it's usually like, oh yeah, whatever, cool. But like when the regular humans die, when it's like some of these other characters could have handled it, it does something special. So I hope that they actually do some serious justice, so that it's not just her being Hawkeye while there's already a Hawkeye. So whether he retires and gets home for Christmas or a little bit late for Christmas, or if he dies, which would be, an interesting diaspora, considering his family died during the blip, right? According to everybody, they were like, Thanos destroyed half the freaking universe. He didn't wipe them out of existence and memory. They were wiped out of existence. That was death. They were dead. And then they came back, right? That 5 years later. So with him being 5 years without his family, something that turned him Ronin, literally, I think that would be, interesting and very poetic, extremely poetic, if he died at the end of it. It's like now his family has to be without him. Now they're the survivors and he's not, and hoping maybe we'll see him in 5 years. If I were to be disappointed, it's that, I don't know. We saw the daughter already and we thought that she was going to be Kate Bishop, right? When he was practicing with her with the bow and arrow in, not Endgame, the one before that, Infinity War. Yeah. So I hope to see something with that later on also, but we'll see. But this was a really good first 2 episodes. I'm glad they dropped the first 2 episodes. They should always drop the first 2 episodes, They're not always going to, but they could. And this shows why they should. Because the first episode wasn't enough to really get us into it. It was enough to make us watch the second episode since it was already on. If only the first episode dropped, I'd probably be like, yeah, I'll get around to watching the second episode, but whatever, Seeing these both, it's cemented. Now I've got to, watch Disney Plus next week and see what the next episode is supposed to be like. Dude, I was going to show my kids Jingle All the Way today. Saying they'd never seen that movie, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Christmas movie. And Nightmare Before Christmas is on Disney Plus now too. So I was going to show those two to them, and I was just like, let's watch Hawkeye, and they were really glad that I did. So there's that. Anyway, fantastic. Go and download or at least listen to the Depeche Mode Christmas Island. Really good song, even in its entirety. Fantastic. And with that, I'll talk to you later. So I hope you guys enjoyed the end credit scene, and please stop spying on me. It's a little bit freaky. If you don't mind, I've got work to do. Peace. You already got your proper leaving.